Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to the RRCO River Road Community Organization board meeting for February of 2022. So because it's a board meeting, the only people who will be able to talk will be those who are board members unless the chair decides to acknowledge you to speak. So, but not until after we've all introduced ourselves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
43.
Well, okay, let's, in our consent calendar, we have a proposed policy that if we have more than 40 attendees, based on our experience with 100 or so we've had recently, we're only going to ask the board members to introduce themselves and anybody who is new to the meeting. So if you are new to the meeting, please raise your hand using the reactions button on the bottom of your screen, and we will acknowledge you for introducing yourself. So let me bring up the participants so I can see you.
And if you're not actually about to speak, then you can mute yourself so that whoever's speaking can be heard better.
Right.
So while John is doing that, I'm going to introduce myself.
Yeah. Please.
My name is Claire Strawn. I'm co-chair with John, and I also am on the Social Justice Committee.
I'm John Belcher, and I'm co-chair with Claire. Joshua, you want to go next?
Sure, Joshua Keelis. I'm no chair. I'm on the board. And yeah, been here for about 5 years in the neighborhood. Check.
Okay, Charles C.
My name is Charles C. Cartwright, and I've lived here for 2 years, and I particularly work on emergency preparedness issues, and I'm on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwight.
Dwight Owens, board secretary. I lived here for 6 years. I'm also chair of the North Eugene Unhoused and Affordable Housing Committee. Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Worster. I've been in the neighborhood about just over 7 years, and I'm the chair of the Emergency Preparedness Committee.
Jackie, would you like to call? I'll do it. Dan Isaacson, are you here?
Yeah, Dan Isaacson, a board member, been a member of the River Road neighborhood for 2 years.
Thank you. Jan Spencer.
This is on the sand. Lindy.
What is Rio?
Yes, her name is Rio.
Ends with Outlet Housing.
For over 40 years.
Somebody has their TV on. Would you please mute yourself for the moment? Jan may not be here yet. How about Harry?
Harry Sanger. I live on Rosewood Avenue, and I've been a River Road neighbor for the entirety of the great pandemic.
Good deal. So let me look and see if anybody has their hands raised. I don't see anybody with a raised hand, so theoretically we have no new attendees, and we will go to our agenda, which I will share. And why can't I share screen?
Dwight is raising his hand.
Dwight, I see your hand. Do you want to speak while John is
Claire.
multitasking? Oh, is that an applause? You're muted. Okay.
Yep, I'm unmuted. If whoever's muting, if you could leave me unmuted so I could ask questions. If I missed something, that would be great.
That would be
Okay.
good.
Is your background quiet?
Yes,
No,
my background is quiet.
I do not understand why I cannot share my screen. Sorry, folks. Do you have any ideas? Joshua?
Maybe we can drop the link to the agenda in the chat, and that
That's a
way,
great idea.
What's the
and then we
problem,
can
John? You
keep
couldn't-
seeing people's faces.
That's also a good point. For some reason, Joshua, I have screens open and I can't share them.
When you hit share screen, nothing happens?
I have a blank screen.
Do you want me to share the agenda?
Well, yeah, if you don't mind, I think that would be easier than having folks have to go check a link. Although that's also another option, Misty. Let's try this first.
I don't know why it would be blank for you. That seems really weird.
I was playing earlier, and that may be why. I was trying to figure out a way to have a fake individual so I could put the agenda on that. But oh well, here we are. So here's the basic agenda. We start with the agenda adjustments and announcements, followed by approving the consent calendar, which we'll scroll down to when we get there, followed by a review of the last general meeting, discussion with board candidates, and from there, we're going to talk about our March election. We're going to switch 6 and 5, and then we'll actually demonstrate the election process for those that are here so you can see how it works. And then we have a couple of motions. One's a letter of support for the city council for moving ahead. The other is about CC&Rs and House Bill 2001. And then we have an item on discussing access to committee meetings and board member behavior. So given all that, well, let's see, are there any other agenda adjustments or announcements to be made today? If so, please raise your hand in the, and we'll call upon you. Harry, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to acknowledge that today's a holiday and wish everybody a happy President's Day. And we'll be celebrating the great George Washington's birthday tomorrow on February 22nd, one of the founders of our great nation, and deserves a moment of recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Okay, shall we move on to and if I see no other hands raised, so let's move on to the consent calendar. If you could scroll down, I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Joshua. So the first item in the consent calendar is a way of passing a bunch of items that hopefully are non-controversial with one vote. And the way it works is if anyone wants to remove anything from the consent calendar, it will not be part of that approval of the consent calendar. It will be handled either later in the meeting at a later meeting, depending upon what the wishes of the person who wants to remove it. Does anyone wish to remove anything or comment about the consent calendar?
Yes, I do, Charles.
Yes, Chelsea.
I'm not going to ask to have it removed, but I wanted to talk just a second about item B, which is the inundation map.
Okay.
I sent a link to the board. My hope was that we would have time to discuss it a bit, even though I didn't emphasize that. But because of the amount of agenda items we have tonight, I would just like to say I'm going to ask later to reschedule this for a later board meeting so we can talk about it more.
So yeah, and I would add the inundation map is the map that the Corps of Engineers made showing us just how wet we will be if and when that one of the dams or all the dams breaks, such as during an earthquake. So I think that is likely to be a future agenda item for a general meeting. So thank you for bringing that to us, Charles. Harry.
Yeah, I'd like to move to remove items A, D, and E from the consent calendar for further discussion.
A, D, and E. Okay. So you want to add those to the agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay. Shall we put them at the end?
No objection.
Okay. So A, D, and E will be added to the agenda. Okay. So 2 policies and the minutes. Okay, having removed those, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the 2 items left in the consent calendar? I see Claire's hand up, so Claire makes the motion. Harry raised his hand as well, so is that a second? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The amended consent calendar is approved. Okay, let's move on to item number 3. Review the last general meeting. We have about 5 minutes here. For those of you who may not remember, that was a meeting where we primarily discussed the widening of Beltline between River Road and Delta Highway. So board members, any thoughts about how that went? Claire?
Actually, I wondered if we could give a few minutes if there's any feedback from the people who are visiting the meeting.
Okay, as long as we stick to the 5 minutes, I think that could work. I'll start the timer, which unfortunately you guys can't see, but I'll let you know when we get down towards the end. So does anyone have any thoughts? Please raise your hand in the participants list and we will call upon you. Teresa.
I would like to commend the board for putting on what I thought was a great informational meeting. I learned a tremendous amount. And I would like to, in particular, thank you, John. I thought you did a very good job.
Why, thank you, ma'am. Jan.
Yeah, I very much think it was a pretty good meeting. It was interesting that the comments made by ODOT, they continuously repetitively use the words improvement. Of course, that's not surprising because that's just kind of what their job is. But I found it, for being supposedly neutral, they weren't neutral at all because, of course, their business is building roads. And I wish Rob Zako had talked about transportation options. He didn't do that at all. I don't know why. So I thought it was great to hear the different opinions. I very much appreciated the other fellow from Santa Clara and the fellow from Northeast. Good comments, all of that. And I think it was well attended. And I think, John, you did a good job for keeping it going too.
Well, thank you, Jan. And kudos to you, Jan, for working together to organize and plan the meeting. I think it went well too. Hans.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I thought it was a really good meeting. I thought it was a pretty fair presentation from all parties. And I liked the comment from Michelle that we should be able to think about it as more than just 2 sides. But yeah, I was really grateful to hear all the information that was presented. So I thought it was well done.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Yeah.
Chelsea.
Yes, I just wanted to echo what others had said. I thought every presenter added tremendous value, and I look forward to more presentations on that subject. It gave me something of an idea as to where I want to focus learning more. And so I thought it was a tremendous meeting. Thank you.
Good deal. Have 2.5 minutes left. Anyone else? Okay, let's move on. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure putting it together with Jan, and I do agree that we definitely learned a lot about what options were out there, and not necessarily all or none. So, Claire, I'll turn it over to you for a board candidate discussion.
Okay, thank you. First, we need to know who in this meeting is considering running for the board position. We have 4 positions open, and we did ask people to submit an application. So if you've done that, we've got you on the list. Thank you, Dwight. I have you. I got your renewed application. But if there's other people present, Susan, Joshua,
Misty and Jan, I see.
Misty,
And Carly.
Carlene?
Carly Gabrielson.
Oh, okay. So we didn't know about you, Carly. I'm trying to scroll this and look at it. So we have, and Stefan.
Yep.
Cool. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. And we have 20 minutes. So I wish we had more time for people who want to have a fuller expression. We will make your statements that you put in the application available to the public before the March meeting. And but we want to, maybe we can go around. Dwight, I see your hand. You're on mute.
I'm missing 3 people and I didn't get Carly's last name.
Gabrielson.
It's in the participants list.
I didn't see it.
Okay. I've got Dwight, Susan,
Susan's last name.
Carly, Susan
Kittleson.
Hilson. Can someone, John, can you give those names to Dwight in the chat so we can move on in the discussion?
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, so what I want to suggest is that you can each have like 2 minutes to ask questions of the board. We thought this would be a good time because for you to get to know us better, for us to get to know you better, and for you to clarify any questions you have before throwing your hat in. Thank you, Harry. I see that note. So I'm just gonna call on you in the order that I see at the top of my page, and I'm going to call on the people who are not currently on the board first, in case we need more time, if that's okay for Jan and Dwight. So Carly.
I'm up first, huh?
Well, unless you want to pass, you can pass if you want.
No, not at all. I'm happy to kick it off. I'm Carly Gabrielson. I have lived here in our community since the end of 2015, but I have lived in Eugene since my family moved here when I was in middle school. So I consider this to be my home, and I've chosen to stay here. And I love living in the River Road community. I grew up in South Eugene, so I know that I can be frank in saying that it's a different experience in this pocket of the neighborhood, and I've honestly just really loved it. I've loved the diversity, the richness, the opportunities to access the river paths via bike, and the businesses that we have access to here. So I find myself here on this meeting. My interest in serving is that I've spent the past decade of my career working in electoral politics on the federal government for our congressman. Many who you probably know is choosing to retire, and so I now find myself with some time on my hands, and at a time that I was asking myself how I could become more involved and utilize the things that I've learned, both working in electoral politics and also for the federal government, with a focus on transportation, of course. This opportunity presented itself. So I also personally am really impacted by the noise pollution of the Zippo manufacturing plant. And so that really personally turned me out to the meeting in January. And I was really happy to see so many folks that also were stepping up to be politically active for the first time within this kind of community sector. So I think I do have a lot of skills that I can provide to the association.
That's 2 minutes, Carly.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I will pause. I guess the only question I have is that I'd love to hear from current board members what particularly you're looking for out of someone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carly. And try and spend most of your time thinking about what you want to know from us, because we'll follow up and pick your brain. You also have a chance to introduce yourself in the general meeting in March as well. Susan.
Hi, my name is Susan Kittleson. I'm 6 months resident of Eugene, moved here to be closer to family, and have been visiting the area for about 27 years. So very familiar with Eugene, have been loving my time being able to come and visit my in-laws, so much so that my husband and I decided to move back here with my son, and my daughter is in the Portland area. I don't really have any significant questions. I am relatively familiar with the organization and have been attending a couple meetings. So I don't really have any questions. I would just say, my experience, I've worked over 25 years in the technology space, worked for Microsoft and Dell Corporation. I've got a lot of experience working in multinational companies. And the reason I think that actually is relevant today and for this conversation is when you're working with multinational companies, you're dealing with people across multiple organizations, faiths, backgrounds, languages, etc. It's really important to have diversity of thought, diversity of conversation. And I'm very passionate about that. But I'm also passionate about not letting things get in the way of progress and making sure that we are constantly moving forward, ensuring voices are heard, but also recognizing that action is necessary and there's always a time for talk. We always have to have action as well. So, that's me. Very much looking forward to meeting everybody and hope to get to know you better.
Thank you. Just looking at the list here. So Stefan.
Yes, hello. My name's Stefan Ostrak, and I've lived in the neighborhood since 1979. And I'm very happy to live here and have easy access to the river, among other things. I don't really have much of questions for the board. I've served on the board before. I haven't gone back to try to figure out what years it was, but my career was as a labor union representative for city, county, and municipal employees. And I'm now, I got the timer on there, and then the Teamsters. And I served on the board and then was just too busy, but I'm now retired and have a little bit more time. My interests are probably primarily around transportation issues in the neighborhood, and I'm interested in serving again on the board.
Okay, thank you. So now Misty.
Hi, my name is Misty Frost. Yes, that is my real name, and my parents were hippies. I was born in Billings, Montana, and I grew up in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I am bilingual in English and Spanish. I'm a mother and a caregiver to my father, who is a Vietnam vet and an enrolled member of the Crow tribe of Montana. Previously, I was on the board of El Rapa, Lane Regional Air Protection Agency. Excuse me. I've lived on Corliss Lane for about 6 years now and became involved with RRCO because I was helping organize Bethel and West Eugene community around clean air and Baxter. I attended active Bethel citizens meetings and learned about RRCO. And I started attending meetings, and very quickly, lucky for me, elections were right around the corner and I landed a seat. During my time on the board, I learned a lot about our neighborhood. I helped establish the Social Justice Committee, and I founded and organized the Emergency Preparedness Committee and asked Jackie to co-chair with me. I had the hardest year of my life last year and was not prepared last year for the elections and lost my seat, but I am back and ready to go and focused. A little bit more about myself and my professional life. I was a paralegal for a local law firm, supporting Spanish speaking individuals with personal injury and workers' comp. Workers' comp. And I was a community organizer, an environmental justice community organizer for Beyond Toxics. And I currently work for the COVID information hotline for the state. And
Misty, that's your 2 minutes.
through a nonprofit called 211. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Now we're going to move to people who are currently on the board. And yeah, the timers are too big and distracting, John.
So would you like me to not display them?
Well, maybe you can display them for yourself. People want to see the people talking.
Okay, I'll have to tell you when you have 15 seconds left.
Thank you. We appreciate you taking care of that. Jan, you have your hand up?
Oh, my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would really like to say thank you, everyone who's interested in being on the board. I've been a board member much of the time since I moved to the neighborhood over 20 years ago. Took a break for a few years some time ago, and there have been times when there weren't so many people running for the board. Personally, I consider the neighborhood association to be one of the absolutely most important assets we have here in the community. We have a little support from the city, maybe some from the county, but the very fact that people in the neighborhood can come together, they can meet like this, even better if we're in person, but Zoom is a good stand-in under the circumstances. But there are just so many issues in the neighborhood, and not just River Road, but we have our own version of much larger issues, much larger social, economic, political, environmental issues, and all those big trends that we read about in the paper. We see our own version of those right here in River Road, and it's pretty fascinating. I mean, this is sociology, and this is, I think the term I like is civic culture. I think we face big challenges moving into the future in all kinds of different ways with resources and energy, urban planning, the environment, and the neighborhood association. Of course, we've got a number of different committees now. And I really encourage people, whether you're elected to the board or whether you're just participating this evening, that to join one of the committees or even ask to start a committee that we may be missing. There may be other people who would like to be a part of that.
15 seconds, Jan.
Yeah, my particular focus is producing more basic needs closer to home: food, energy, water, and I appreciate those items being on the agenda now and then here at RRCO. Okay, that's good.
Thanks, Jan. Dwight?
Hello, I'm Dwight Owens. My nickname is DW, and that's what's on the screen. A lot of people have a tendency to call me Dwayne, so I go by DW. This is to be my second term on the board. I joined the board 3 years ago. I've been secretary for the last year and a half or so. I have a lot of expertise. When I lived in the Portland area, most of my adult life, I was either on a board of a business organization or a neighborhood association or a coalition of neighborhood associations. I have a lot of interest and expertise in developing affordable housing, and I served on the board of directors for Rose Community Development Corporation, who is responsible for building approximately 1,000 units of affordable housing in Southeast Portland. I also have a background in land use. I served on the Coalition Land Use Committee for.
You froze. Okay, Dwight, you're frozen.
Sometimes silence is a strong message.
Thank you, Dwight. I'm going to move to Joshua next.
Hey, yes, hello, I'm Joshua Keelis, and I have been on the board now. This is the end of my second term, so I feel like I'm finally getting a decent idea of how things work. And yeah, I'm on the communications committee, communications and outreach. I tend, by trade, I've been doing web development, some software and web development and web infrastructure management type stuff. And also some rental, we have a rental. And so, yeah, I have an interest in land use. I did some work, I joined the focus groups when the neighborhood plan was rocking and helped to formulate some stuff there. And I do a lot of work helping the board with just technology stuff, keeping things organized and keeping things running, and helping to manage website and that sort of thing. Yeah, and I'm really a big advocate of community, and I like to try to find ways to get people working together. And I was one of the spearheads of the lawn sign committee to get that going back a couple years ago. And yeah, that's probably
Okay.
good enough.
Thank you, Joshua. I see someone named Jim with your hand up. Are you raising your hand because you want to run for the board and speak now, or are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Claire and John. I visited tonight as an opportunity to
Yes, sir.
to visit with the board and to see if there was an opportunity
Okay.
where I could be of help. I'm Jim Evangelista. I'm the executive director of Reality Kitchen nonprofit, and I just want to compliment everyone who I've heard speak so far. I think the neighborhood is in wonderful hands. There is every reason to select one or all of the folks who have been speaking tonight. And I feel very confident that our neighborhood is in the right direction. I wish I lived here myself, but I feel like I do because most of my waking hours are here at Reality Kitchen. I'm actually in my truck and trying to get home, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to visit with friends and to see the state of our neighborhood, which I'm confident is strong. And when and how I can be of help, I certainly will continue to do all I can to be involved and to be of help. And I just want to be supportive of the good work that both Claire and John have done, and really appreciate all the folks and the thoughts and the perspectives that I've heard tonight. So we just want you to know that Reality Kitchen's still here, and we're going to continue playing a role in bringing folks together in increasing ways. And thank you so much for all the support that everyone in this neighborhood has given us over the years. And we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. And Fridays are a good time to come on by and help our supported staff gain the experience that they need to be independent.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Really happy to see your face and happy about Reality Kitchen moving on.
Thank you.
Okay. And thanks for the affirmations. So do any of the current board members have questions for any of the people who are running for the board?
That's our 20 minutes, Claire.
Okay. I want to say one question I have is, and I think some of you have spoken to it, is having some technical fluency is important, and having a passion that you want to step up to lead in the neighborhood is also important. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and please feel free to reach out if you want to discuss one-on-one. Okay,
Good
signing
deal.
off, John.
Thank you. Joshua, could you put the agenda back up, please? And we said we would swap 5 and 6. So you and Charlie are on to talk about how the election is going to work before we demonstrate said election.
All right.
Okay. Do you want to go first, Charlie, or should I?
Well, I'll just say that since the last board meeting, Joshua and John and I have met several times to talk about the procedures to follow for the election in March. And my portion of that has been the gathering and maintaining of membership data, because we knew that we were going to have that absolutely in perfect shape. And I was very happy to work on that. And I want to report that around the first of the year, we had approximately 50 members in good standing, which means they were members who had come to a meeting in the preceding 12 months and had signed in at our meeting. That was around 50 people, and now it's around 244 people. So we've made an enormous positive change, I think, in the active participation of our community in this. And I expect that tonight we've gotten some additional members that I'm very happy to welcome. So with that, I'm going to ask Joshua to make comments about what we've learned in our committee.
Okay, hopefully everyone's had enough of a chance to see the item.
Sure.
I'll go ahead and stop the share just so we can have it be more personal. Yeah, so basically we actually found a software. You know, we were trying to see whether we were going to have to do it manually or whether we would be able to have a software program, you know, like a website that would manage the election for us. And thanks to, in large part, to John's diligent testing, we actually found one that would meet enough of our requirements that it will actually work to do our sort of slightly unusual process. So the way that it's going to work is that everyone will receive, everyone that's like a member in good standing will receive a code, like a username and password type combination before the election, which will happen in, you know, at the next general meeting in March. And then at the meeting, we will, you know, we'll have the board, we'll have essentially another round of what we just had of the candidates having an opportunity to speak with, you know, to speak with everyone that has come to vote, and only the people that show up at the meeting will actually be voting. And so the candidates will say their piece, and there'll be time for question and answer, and then, you know, once we feel like we're ready to get the election started, we'll move into that period. And I don't know, have I gotten it all so far, or have I missed anything crucial up to this point? John?
I think that's pretty close. The way people will get the information on how to vote will be via an email.
Yeah.
You didn't say that specifically, but it's kind
Right.
of
Yes, we will be sending out an email to everyone. You know, and we have email addresses for the folks in our membership database. So we'll send out those messages, and then and so then when we're ready to start the election, we will put the link into the chat, and everybody can click on that link, and then using the information in their email, They will go ahead and log in to the website, and there'll be a list of all the candidates, and you'll be able to vote for up to 4 of them, and then submit your result. And if everything goes well, we should be able to have the results by right there and then at the at the end of the meeting, which would be nice. Like as soon as we close the election process. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to mention that slipped my mind. Let's see. Do you guys think of anything else that we should mention to people about how it's going to work? Oh, well, and also, right. After we open the election, anyone that's having trouble, we're going to have someone from the board who's not running for re-election fielding questions from people. So people will raise their hand. We'll keep a queue of people who are having problems, and then there'll be 1 or 2 folks that will be sort of private chatting with people who are having issues and questions, and making sure that they are able to get their vote in. And then once everybody's questions are answered, we're not going to try to schedule anything else during that meeting. So we'll have the whole rest of the meeting to just work it out. And once everybody has successfully voted, then we will close the election, get the results, and end the meeting. So, if you don't care about the results, you can leave early, because we'll post them on the website and stuff like that afterwards. But that's the plan.
So you might ask if there are any questions.
Yeah, Jackie has her hand raised.
Jackie, questions?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One, I think Carlene also posted in the chat. Will there be enough time if, like, let's say 2 people are joining from the same household, for them to log in, cast their vote, and sign out and log in with the other person's information?
Yeah, so we have a list of all the people that are sharing logins, and actually we're going to, rather than sending them an automated message, we will send them personal messages. Because people are going to be voting with codes, that was one of our requirements, and that's actually why it was so hard to find a system that would work. One of the reasons was because we needed to find one that didn't require the email address. So one email address could have 2 people, and each of those people, if they're both members in good standing, will each get their own code sent to that email address. And so they would log in separately, and each code gets 1 vote.
Okay, and we'll give them enough time so that 2 people could go in and vote on the same computer?
We're going to basically have the entire second half of we're going to have 45 minutes to make sure that everybody gets voted. We're going to, we'll spend the first half hour or 45 minutes or whatever talking with the candidates and getting questions answered. And then we're just going to basically vote. And once we make sure everybody's successfully voted, then we'll be done.
Okay. And then my second question was, will we be sharing any of these instructions in the March newsletter so that people kind of have an expectations of what to do?
That is a good idea. I mean, I'm certainly
Absolutely, we'll do that. And we will also have a link to people's statements that doesn't include their personal contact information.
Okay, perfect.
More questions? Anyone? Bueller? Oh, okay.
Sorry, what's the deadline to submit our personal statements?
Well, technically somebody could be nominated on the day of the election, as long as they're a member in good standing. So really, there is no absolute requirement for submitting a statement.
I meant in the newsletter.
Oh,
Today was the deadline. But we'll give you a couple days grace.
Okay, I'll send it to you tonight. Thank you.
No, don't go to the website and fill out the form, the link from the form.
Hey, Misty, I think it's not separate statements. It's whatever you posted in that application is what's going to be published.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep. Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, then John, do you want to go to the mock election?
Sure. Let me explain what has happened. I've sent
it looks like Teresa maybe has something.
Okay.
Teresa, do you you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering, would people be voting individually? Everyone has a code, so will there be a time for someone to enter that code and then vote, and you go to the next person? Is that
Yep.
how it works?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
What we basically will pass out the link, and you can just visit the website, log in and vote with one code, and then probably just you may have to like log out, like close the web browser and open it again, and then go back to the web, click the link again, and then enter the other code, something like that.
All of these details will be published in the newsletter too,
okay,
and explained at the meeting.
I was just wondering if there was any value in trying to do a dry run before, just to make sure everything worked.
That's
I
what
know
we're
that
about
might
to
not
do,
be-
Teresa.
Funny that you should say that, because that's the next item on our agenda.
Okay.
And Teresa, people can vote simultaneously. So our hope is that in the 10 minutes or so that it takes, we'll have everybody voting. And then the part that we're not certain about is whether we can get the results immediately and share that night. We will try. The challenge is that we anticipate that some people will have difficulty voting, and they'll have to vote through the personal chat through to Charlesy. So we haven't done it before, so we're not absolutely certain we'll have the results at night. Charlesy?
Yeah, one of the things that would be very helpful on the board, and I'm addressing right now the board members, the ones who are not running for office, which I think is Dan and Jackie and John and Claire, that it would be good for us to have an alternate to me to do the answering of questions. So if you want to think about which of you would be available to do that, that would be very, very helpful. Thanks.
But it's a good question, Teresa. Thank you. Okay, so what I have done is I have sent an ID and a password to each of the board members, and they are going to vote on their favorite cartoon character. We have 6 characters that are on the ballot, and I'm about to share the URL for all of you, because I don't want to have to try to figure out who's board members and who aren't. So you should see at https vote election runner /com election / our lowercase y uppercase DEOQ. And what the board members need to do is to log into that URL and cast their votes.
We're getting a message that it's not activated.
Okay, let me activate it very quickly. Sorry, that's an important part of the process. Okay, where am I? Now, where did it go?
You're somewhere in Eugene.
Thank you for that help. Let's see. It's a good thing we're trying this. There it is.
Maybe I'll go ahead and share my screen so that people can
see how it works. Okay, good idea.
Let me know when you get it started, and I'll refresh.
Okay. I'm working my way through these screens. Launch election. So it says your election will launch any second now. The page should refresh in a few seconds. So let me see if I can vote.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, there it is.
If the software works, John, and we should share it with Russia, they could probably use it every once in a while.
Good point.
Yeah, still got it.
Now I'm just going to make sure I don't have any spaces accidental. I mean, I don't know if I'm sure they're smart enough to not do that.
It's rejecting my voter ID and voter key.
Well, it should be capital Claire _ capital Strawn as your user ID, and your voter key is 1234.
You're telling my secret code to everyone?
I already told them before.
Still doesn't
All
like it.
right. I guess I'm going to have to give away who my 4 preferred. Let's see.
I don't know, Claire. That's what I put in.
Well, this is just a clue that we might run into this issue.
Perhaps.
Mine worked.
Good for
Jackie
you.
has
It's
her hand up.
interesting.
Okay, mine's working now.
Yeah, I have a question about the usernames. If you are choosing those usernames to send to people or if they're auto-generated.
We're sending them to people.
Okay, so I typed in, I'm joining from my phone to see, I'm sure we have a lot of people that join from their phone as well to see how that process works. And it's a little clunky to switch back and forth between screens to grab your username. But I did find that I typed mine in all lowercase, even though my name, the username came through as capital, let me log in. So it's not.
Oh, that's good to know.
Which is good.
Okay. You know, in the ones we're going to send out to everyone, there will be no capitals. So.
And John, also, I tried voting so that, because I asked for 4, right? But there are gonna be people who maybe only want to vote for 1 of the 4 or 3 of the 4. So I voted for 3 of the 4, and it did take it, no problem. So it's a good check and bounce against it.
I set it up so that you could vote for none.
Perfect.
I don't have a cell phone, and I didn't memorize the URL where this thing is online.
Would you like me to tell you, sir?
Sure.
You can click on it in the chat,
Yeah, you can
Jan.
just click the chat message.
Check on the chat.
840.
You can click on it in there.
Claire, hang on a second. 8405. Got that, Jan?
No.
8405.
And where does that entered into?
Well, just
where it
click
says
click the
voter
link in
key.
click the link in the chat right there that John put in, and just
Okay.
it'll open your browser and get you to the right page, and then you just put your information in.
And where is this item in the chat? Is it the beginning or is it? Okay, I see it here. Okay.
So I was just going to add that it's interesting, Joshua, because you were sharing your screen. So my choices came up in a different order. And that's a feature because it'll prevent people from just picking the first 4 and it. Yeah.
Set that too.
Good to know.
Okay, I have 9 voters. Has everyone had a chance to vote?
No. Jan is in the process.
Oh, you know, and while we're all voting, I need to mention one more crucial detail, which is that we have to pay $39 for each election we run through these guys. So there will be a fee associated, just to be clear about that. It's not a free website, but it seemed reasonable enough that we decided it would be worth it. So we
Good
want
thing we don't have to have a poll tax.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, I voted.
Okay. So, click on settings, close election link.
So I just have a really quick point of order. If there's a financial expenditure related to this, do we need to have a vote on that to authorize as a board?
We already
I
did.
suppose that's true.
This is the first I've heard of it, Charlesie.
Okay, I thought we had.
Treasurer.
I hadn't heard of this either. This is all new to me as well.
So would someone like to make a motion while I figure out how to close the election to expend $37?
I think we
hold
can
the
wait till
election.
let's wait till the election's done, see that it works, and then we can vote. I'll make the motion.
Classic.
I would be happy to make a donation to cover the costs for the election process to keep our democracy alive and well.
We do have money in the bank account.
Yeah, I think we can afford $39 for a.
I actually have $40 for RRCO that's been sitting in a clay pot on my desk, for half a year, so that can cover it. That's $40. I think it was from yard signs.
Okay, we only have 8 voters for some reason.
Well, that's because we have 8 board members, right?
No, we have 9.
Oh, no, we have 9, right?
I had seen that Dwight had dropped and then joined. Maybe he missed.
I'm back. We got my internet dropped. My Wi-Fi went offline, so I'm back.
Okay. Did you get your email with your code and your username?
Yes.
Okay, so go to the chat. Do you see John's post where he put the link to the election so you can do a test vote?
Let me see if I can get to
If he was off when you posted it, John, you might have to post it again for him.
I can't get
Can you see the chat, Dwight?
I can't get to that screen.
With your permission, Dwight, maybe we can just move on because this is just a figuring out the problems session.
I vote yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's not quite how it works, but
I think Betty Boop, deserves better than that.
Boop, boop, boop.
okay, I'm having trouble figuring out how to close it. So we're gonna have to figure that out before the next election.
You already closed it before when we did the.
I know, but I'm not seeing the screen that I saw before.
I remember it was really hard to find.
I have a quick question, if I may. So if we have, say, 400 people show up to vote.
Well, we won't have more than 250 probably. But anyway, that's a lot of people, yes.
Yeah, how are you gonna get in a reasonable time frame everybody a code?
Well, because
Electronic magic.
Yeah, we're gonna set up a MailChimp account just for our RRCO voting, and we're gonna import everybody, and we're gonna send out a mass mailing with codes. Charles's already compiled a list that so we'll just import all the usernames and codes and send them out to people.
Okay, I have a default way of getting through this, which is it's going to automatically end at 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So can we make that motion now and get it behind us?
Okay, I move that we use this election runner process and that will cost $39.
Actually, it's 37.
Okay, $37.
I lied to you.
I move that we use election runner to run the board election this year.
Is there a second? Claire seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody opposed? Okay,
No.
motion passes unanimously. So we need to vamp for another 1 minute and 50 seconds. And I promise you, by the time we do the election, we'll know how to do this.
You're sending those usernames and codes ahead of the meeting to everybody who's eligible.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
We'll send them like maybe the day or a couple days beforehand. I mean, we want to wait. We want to have it pretty close so it doesn't get lost in antiquity in the email box. But maybe we'll send them the day before or the morning of, so that everybody will be sure to have them by the time the meeting rolls around, and then that way, we'll be ready.
But you have to be present at the meeting to vote?
Yes, I was about to say, these are the criteria we use to determine whether this software would work. Only RRCO members in good standing can vote. That's because there's a list of who's allowed to vote, which we set in advance. Only those in attendance of the meeting can vote, because we won't share the URL anywhere but in the meeting. Voting shall be available to all active members participating from each Zoom logon. We think that's possible. The voting process shall be easily accessible by both those who are phoning in and those who are logging on. If the standalone software is used, it should be free or reasonably priced. We couldn't find it free, but 37 seems reasonable. Ideally, the process shall yield immediate results. We will see. And then Individual voters' votes should be confirmed, but ideally either unavailable or available only to vote counters. The only way we could see how everybody votes is if we paid another $100. So we're not going to do that. So the results. This is now 7:50. I'm not sure this is right. It says that each candidate got 2 votes, which is not possible. So let me download the
many
results and
candidates
see if
were
it's the
there?
same.
We had 8 votes. There was a total of, well, if you don't have to vote for.
Oh, here it is.
Can you
So
speak?
we got 6 votes for Laura Simpson, 6 votes for Betty Boop, and 6 votes for Stimpy. Yosemite Sam and Wonder Woman both got 5 votes. So we would have to hold a runoff between Yosemite Sam and Wonder Woman to determine who won. And we'll figure out a process for that. With over 80 or so people, it's unlikely we would have a tie, but we'll deal with it when we get there if we need to. Poor George Jetson only got 3 votes. So I think with a few glitches to be worked out, I think we demonstrated that indeed this process can work. Any further questions?
Yes. I have a
Yes.
question. Have you already vetted all the candidates?
We will make sure that they have attended a meeting. Well, if they're here tonight, they're vetted.
No, I mean the candidates, whether they live in the neighborhood or they own a
Yes,
business.
we're going to check their home addresses.
Okay. And my other question is, if you're going to send out the information for people to be able to vote, does that mean they can also vote if they're not at the meeting?
No, because we won't pass out the URL until the meeting.
Okay.
So you will have the information to vote, except you won't know where to vote.
Right. I knew you had said that before. I just wanted to get it clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think it's as fail safe as we could possibly make it. You can't vote twice. Carrie, did you have a question?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, then.
John, sorry, I had a question here.
Yeah, Harry, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
So Jim had jumped in earlier and mentioned how he didn't live in the neighborhood, but he runs a business in the neighborhood. Can you or Claire clarify? That would make him eligible to run still, correct?
That's correct.
There can be one representative from a business, yes, that is a voting member. And he's attended, so theoretically he could run for the board.
Yeah, I apologize for not bringing that up earlier, but I thought that was an important clarification to make for people who are here that might not have been aware of that.
Okay, good deal. So shall we move on to item number 7? Unless there are any more questions.
Do you want to try sharing your screen again now that you seem to have got it figured out, or should I keep going with the?
I can share my screen.
Thank you, everybody, for sitting through that.
Yep. It was a little squiffy, but we got there. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a proposed action to discuss and potentially approve the language below to be sent to the Eugene City Council and Lane Transit District Board of Directors. There's a suggested motion that basically, well, I'll read it quickly. It's not that long. The next one wouldn't be usable that way. The River Road Community Organization has been engaged in the moving ahead process since 2015. LTD has hosted open houses and opportunities for input in Santa Clara and River Road, and RRCO has hosted LTD at our neighborhood meetings and to discuss transit improvements and related issues. In addition, our neighborhood planning efforts over the last 5 years have had us personally canvass all our business and mail all our residents along the corridor to specifically engage them in in-person discussions about transit-oriented development, a long-term vision for our neighborhood corridor. In each of our interactions, most neighbors have been supportive of the MX alternative. We continue to listen to our neighbors, share information, and encourage respectful discourse on all matters pertaining to our neighborhood. Many of the action items in our draft neighborhood plan will best be accomplished via implementation of the River Road MX alternative, such as separated bike lanes and additional signalization, signalized pedestrian bike crossings, along with improvement of transit options. To date, our collaborative neighborhood planning process involves our residents, our special districts, Lane County, the city of Eugene, and LTD. Together, we are working on charting a path for the future of River Road and Santa Clara, which includes public transportation. Would someone like to make that motion to send that to LTD and the city of Eugene? Harry, is that your vote?
Yeah.
Do you want to speak or do you want to make the motion?
I want to make the motion, but I just want to make sure that we correctly spell MX as it's spelled below, capital E, lowercase m.
You're right. I blew that. I'll do it.
No, it's okay. I just want to make sure we're getting it right, but I do so move.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Dwight seconds. Welcome back, Dwight. Any discussion before we vote? Please raise your hand in the participants list if you wish to speak. Okay, I see no hands raised. Shall we vote? All those in favor, let's have you raise your hand. Okay, Jan, did you want to say something? You're muted, Jan.
No, I'm
You want to
voting.
vote? Okay.
No.
Joshua, are you voting or
I'm
do you want to
voting.
speak?
I'm
Okay.
voting.
Okay, the rest of us, should you choose, please vote. I'm not seeing where I can vote. I'm raising my hand.
Dan may be abstaining.
I am.
Okay, Dan's abstaining. Everyone else is voting yes, so the motion passes 8-0-1 with Dan abstaining. Got that, Dwight?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, everybody. The second item, number 8, is a board letter to the City Council on CCNRs and House Bill 2001. This one is rather lengthy, but I will try to explain it rather than have to read it all to you, as you can see here. Basically, this is a request. I'll read the first paragraph in the last one. I think that'll bring it home. Eugene Council is mandated, City Council mandated to pass a new land use code to implement House Bill 2001 in Eugene by June 31st. The Planning Commission has submitted proposed language that meets the minimum requirements required and adds additional language that's intended to either encourage or incentivize building of additional middle housing to help meet Eugene's significant need for low income and workforce housing. To assess whether and to what extent that proposed code will produce such needed housing, city councilors need to know the extent of where code can actually be implemented. Although House Bill 2001 mandates the bill applies to all properties that allow single-family housing, land use code cannot override the provisions of existing subdivision codes, covenants, and restrictions, such as prohibiting a second dwelling on a lot and prohibiting the subdivision of that lot. So what I show here in a table is that prior to 1990, these are codes, covenants, and restrictions that I did in a not an extensive, obviously, but an attempt to look at codes, covenants, and restrictions over the years. Prior to 1993, of the 8 I was able to find, only 2 had any kind of a code, covenant, restriction that prevented middle housing, such as only one dwelling on a lot or setting a minimum size for a dwelling. However, after 1993, the ones that I have listed here, every single one of them would prevent middle housing from being built on that property. So what the request is, and one more set of information, this is information for the Northeast neighbors, which is the area basically where Shad Drive is. And John Faville, who went through and found all the subdivision CCNRs, and he found that 80% of the properties on their part of the neighborhood would not be allowing middle housing. So there's a question of, I think the point being made here in the request of the city council is that we suggest the city council obtain information about CCNR impacts of House Bill 2001 before they consider adopting the optional code to implement the House Bill 2001, and we request them to ask staff to provide that information before they begin deliberating. They need to know just to what extent, in my opinion, they should know to what extent House Bill 2001 is going to affect people and just where they're going to be able to apply it. So that's the request that the city council asks staff to let them know to what extent the codes, covenants, and restrictions are going to be problematic for House Bill 2001. So, and then there's one minor change that I did take one word out of this proposed request, and say when they consider implementation of optional House Bill 2001 code rather than any at the request of a board member. So that's the proposal for the board to consider sending to the city council. Would anyone like to make that motion? Claire, making the motion?
Second.
And Dwight seconds. Discussion. Claire, and you're muted.
Yeah,
There you go.
I think the main, getting out of the weeds and into the overview, this is an equity issue that the places with developments that are newer and more expensive have codes that say they can't have ADUs and other things. So that's why this is an important letter.
Thank you. Joshua.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to articulate all of my thoughts on this in an eloquent way, but I feel like this letter, while I'm not totally opposed to it, I feel like it's a little bit heavy-handed to say that we're requesting that no, that they have to do this before they can meet their big deadline. And I think the assumption that I know this letter, I wish this letter had more specific, concrete examples as to why. It's sort of like well, they should know this because they should know it. It's going to be a good thing. And it's like, well, okay, but I don't know if anybody really understands, or very few people probably understand exactly why. And I think, all of us would agree potentially, well, we don't want the height raised and a few other things, but certain things like being able to add detached plexes or other sorts of things really will encourage existing property owners to put, smaller dwellings, in creative places on their property that they might not have been. And I think, we spoke earlier, John, and you had voiced your concern about this measure, bulldozing down, old houses and building more expensive new housing. And I really don't see how a lot of the stuff that's being proposed is really going to change that, because that actually can happen under the default minimum code. So yeah, I won't vote against this, but I think I will abstain, just because I just can't quite convince myself that it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Joshua. Harry?
Well, I have two questions. So one is this is this in solidarity with NLC, or is this something that we're doing on our own?
Other neighborhood associations have sent similar letters to council, but it's not an NLC thing.
Okay, so it's not coordinated, but it is a shared concern amongst other neighborhoods as well.
Other neighborhoods have this concern, yes.
Yeah. And then my other question was, is there a reason that you chose 1993 as the break point on that chart? Is there something significant to that year in land use code?
I'm not absolutely certain. I know at some point in time, the city changed their subdivision requirements and asked that CCNRs be submitted. I talked to another fellow ex-planning commissioner who thought perhaps that when developers had to come up with CCNRs, they went to some site and found a checklist of CCNRs to include. That's total conjecture, but that's possibly why all of a sudden these types of provisions were added to CCNRs, because before they weren't required. But that's, don't quote me on that. I have no idea whether that's really true.
Yeah, so we blame the internet. So with that said, I would say I think this letter is great. I think it highlights the potential problems of implementing policy without, a careful deliberation and a full understanding of what's involved with potential policy. I think this is just a recommendation. We're not forcing the city to do anything. So I would support it.
Okay, thank you, Harry. Dan.
Yeah, I have to be really careful about what I chime in here, but one thing I just want to ask was the list where it says that there is a CCNR. I know that having a CCNR recorded and having an active CCNR, and the definition of that has been kind of, it's very woody. I know this, we sold the property myself just this past summer, and it had a CCNR from the 50s, but because it had a number of developments since then that hadn't followed the CCNR, it was basically an inactivated one that had never been taken off the roll. So if you were to pull the data from the county, it would say, yeah, there's a CCNR for the neighborhood, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it would ever be active, or it is active, or would be would stand up against any sort of new challenge or development or any of that kind of stuff. So do we know that the list, when it says that it is that they have a CCNR, is ones where they have been following, say, for example, since the 1977 one for Collier Plot, since 1977, that those CCNRs have been followed since then in every development since then, so that they're an active and would be precluding any action from HB 2001.
And I am not a lawyer, nor have I played one on TV. So I don't know whether or not that argument would hold up in a court of law. I know that a couple of years ago, there was a fair amount of coverage in the Register Guard of a neighbor in the South Hills who forced their neighbor to cut down a tree because their CCNR said that they couldn't allow trees to grow up to hide their view.
Right.
But that's all I know. I don't know whether or not failure to enforce means you cannot enforce later. I just know that the city has said, we don't know anything about CCNRs, so we don't want to talk about them or don't see the need. Okay, thank you, Dan. And for those of you who aren't aware, Dan is a current planning commissioner, so he needs to be very careful on what he says and asks. Jan.
Yeah. I am unmuted. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I just appreciate all the comments. This is to try to put this in a little bit more historical perspective. What we're being asked to do is densify. And because we're starting to figure out that maybe suburbia is not exactly the best way to provide for housing needs. And of course, as you mentioned, John, the more recent subdivisions try to protect themselves from, with their privilege. I see 2,000 square feet, 1,800 square feet. Those aren't real big houses, but my sense is that what we're beginning to see is a little bit more of a civic collision between the haves and the have-nots in terms of what's good for the public, in terms of land use planning. I have an ADU. I'm sitting in it right now, a structure I built in my backyard. It's a passive solar space to help increase residential density. But I'm in favor of missing middle housing. But I think that this is just a preview of some difficult community conversations we're going to be having about land use and probably transportation too, as time goes on and our collective wealth is somewhat in decline because of overreach of our consumer culture. So I think this is just a preview of more of these kinds of discussions we're going to be having over the years. That's it.
Okay, thank you. This is a board meeting, so normally we don't allow non-members to participate, but we have only a couple of minutes left. I'll let Julie ask or make her statement if you wish. Julie Hume, if you can do it quickly, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my hand up, John.
Okay, then I saw what was going on. Shall we move
Thank
to
you.
voting then? For the board members, those of you who support this motion, please raise your hand. And I'm raising my hand, but because I'm sharing the screen, I can't do so. Can't vote, but I am voting yes. So I see myself, Jan, Claire, Ellen, your vote doesn't count. Sorry, Dwight's voting yes. But I don't, Dan is abstaining, I am sure. And
Yes.
I also assume Joshua is abstaining.
Yeah.
Jackie's voting yes. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Harry, I assume you're voting yes?
John, I have mine up as well.
Okay.
It's a check, green check, which is what
Okay,
I'm supposed to use.
thank you.
Okay.
Harry, I don't see your vote. Could you share it verbally?
Aye.
There it is, yes, okay. So we have 7 yes, no, well, how many, who votes no, I guess? Does anyone vote no? Please tell me. We've got to figure out a way around this screen sharing issue. I hear nobody saying no, and we have both, excuse me, Dan and Joshua voting no. So the vote is 7 yes, 0 no, and 2 abstaining. Thank you. Okay. Okay, now we have access to committee meetings and board member behavior. Let me get my timers back up. Harry, you have 2 minutes to make your presentation and then a motion should you wish.
Okay, thank you, John. So we are an organization of rules, and it has been made clear in recent meetings how important having rules and maintaining decorum is to this organization. So I'd like to share the indisputable facts surrounding the February meeting of the RRCO Social Justice Committee. It was scheduled from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and the meeting was closed to neighbors at 5:20 p.m. Article 7 of the RRCO Charter addresses committees. The full text of Section 4 relating to committee procedures and authority is as follows. Committee meetings shall be open to all RRCO members. All appointed committee members are allowed to vote, including the chairperson and secretary. The tie, the motion will not pass as there is no majority. Written minutes shall be taken that record attendance, all decisions and actions taken, and a summary of topics discussed. A verbatim transcript is not necessary. The chairperson or designee shall provide reports to the co-chairs of the executive board about committee meetings, decisions, progress, and activities. Committees or committee members may not take positions or actions representing the RRCO executive board or general membership without specific authorization from the executive board or general membership, respectively, to do so. So those are the facts as I understand them. What is unclear is how this decision was made to close the meeting to prevent all RRCO members from joining while the meeting was still in progress. What happens to the items discussed during the period the meeting was closed? And if further action is required for RRCO to address this violation of the charter to preserve our integrity and restore the neighborhood's faith in the public process. So I had provided some suggested motions, and after reviewing the way this was submitted in the suggested motions, I would like to apologize for the adversarial tone there. I think it was taken that I was making a statement that this is what should happen. These were just suggestions. So my motion that I would actually like to make is I move that the RRCO board, and I can put this in the chat, I move that the RRCO board take this issue under consideration and develop a plan to be discussed at a future general membership meeting in an open and transparent manner.
Okay, Is there a second for that motion? Could you make it verbally? Because I can't see my screen if you do intend to second it. Harry, your
I see
motion.
a green check from Dwight. Is that meant to be a second, Dwight? You're muted.
Thank you for taking over, Claire.
Vote, I took it down.
So there appears to be no second. Would you like to make your second motion, Harry?
I don't know how much more open to dialogue and fair discussion I can be. There was a violation of our charter, and there was not.
You have a motion, Harry?
There was not so much as an apology issued to any of the neighbors that may have been affected by being locked out of a public meeting. If we do not take any sort of action or even discuss this issue, it seems like we are authorizing the abuse of our charter and not recognizing violations. And that seems to fly in the face of transparency and accountability that I believe are important to local governance.
Harry, I would point out that indeed the person who closed the chat acknowledged that it was an error and that that person would not do that again. So perhaps that's why you didn't get a second. Do you have another motion?
So I do not at this time, I do not feel like this has been adequately addressed. I move that we postpone this matter until next month's board meeting.
So you're moving to table till next month. Is there a second for that? And again, please speak up verbally, or Claire, if you see anybody's hand raised, please let me know.
Jan's hand is up.
Jan, are you seconding?
Yes.
Okay. Jackie's hand is up.
Yeah, I have a question, Harry. Is your intent to dig into what happened at the social justice meeting that was missed, or to generally talk about things going forward with how committee meetings should operate? I'm a little confused if we're focusing on that one meeting and what took place there, or if you're trying to establish things going by the motion.
Well, so my concern, I mean, we have board member candidates here. My concern is A, how did we ever get to a point where somebody felt it was okay to close a meeting? And B, how do we ensure that's not going to happen in the future? Because a simple, whoops, I messed up. I emailed everybody on the board a half hour before the meeting was scheduled to close, and I still couldn't get into it. That's a problem.
So I have a substitute motion, which is that we're planning a retreat for board members, and I feel like a restatement and agreement to this kind of policy would be an appropriate topic to be taken up at the retreat. I want to appreciate, Harry, that you're supporting our ability to remember and use the rules that we have in place. I appreciate that that's where you're coming from. And I want to say also that there's reasons why people felt that we had to take extreme measures, and I have never heard any apology or any responsibility from you about that. And so I'm done. I am done.
Point of order, Claire. I issued an apology for the disruptive.
Excuse me, let me take over for just a second.
John, this is a point of order. I can interrupt.
Yes, I have a point of order for you, Harry. Claire made a motion. We cannot do anything. And still there is a second.
That I'm objecting
Harry,
to.
stop. We'll get to it after we see whether or not we have a second. Claire, would you restate your
motion? My motion is that this topic is best taken up at the board retreat.
So you're moving to amend the motion. Harry,
nobody has apologized, and I've apologized.
Follow Robert's rules, please.
I am. This is a point of order. It's not debatable, and I may interrupt the speaker.
No, we have a motion on the table. Once that's done, you can make your point of order. Claire, are you proposing to change the tabling till the next morning meeting, or to?
John, can I say something here, please?
No, let me get this done, please.
We had a previous motion by Harry.
Right, and sorry, Jan, but Claire has moved to
We had a
modify that
motion and a
motion.
second, John, point of parliamentary procedure. We had a
That's-
motion and a second for a motion I had on the table.
Harry, you
The
don't
vote not
understand
required
parliamentary
before another
procedure.
motion can be voted on.
Harry, Joshua, would you silence Harry until we can get through this, please? There is a motion on the table. It has been seconded, but it is still appropriate for someone to make another motion to modify that motion to, instead of holding that discussion at the next board meeting, to the next retreat. Is that true, Claire?
Yes, that is the motion.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, so now that is the motion we are considering, to change the time for it to be taken off the table till the next retreat. Now, Harry, you may have your discussion on that ancillary motion. And if he's muted, Joshua, please unmute him.
He's not muted.
Yeah, I see other hands up. I don't have my hand up at this time. I'd like to hear from the rest of the board before I comment.
Okay, thank you. Jan, you were wishing to speak before. Go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, the motion to pick up this issue at a board meeting, that satisfies me. I think the protocol at the committee meetings needs to be clarified. And I think to say that that would be on the agenda for a board retreat, that satisfies me.
So either way works for you? Is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Dan,
I just raised my hand because I would like to speak when this process is over with my motion of my own.
okay. So further discussion on the motion to modify the original motion to table this motion until the retreat. Any further discussion? Joshua?
Yeah, no, I feel like the topic of how to manage our meetings and what sort of like it does feel like a big topic, and it does seem like it needs more than like a quick, motion after the bell. Like I like the idea of tabling it to the I like the idea of tabling it until we get a chance to consider it a little more thoroughly at the retreat, which will be coming up soon, right? When is the retreat again?
We haven't set a time yet.
We haven't set a time, but after the next
yeah,
election.
probably at the next board meeting, we'll do that.
Okay, Harry, I don't see any other hands up.
So first off, there was a comment sent to me privately that was meant for everybody, but it says, you all seem to want to shut Harry down. Why? And it said, Jan is right on. Claire, come on. I think we've created an environment here where certain people may not even feel comfortable speaking to the board because it's been made clear that if somebody defends me, they'll become scapegoated. This is insane that this level of political infiltration has been allowed to get into our neighborhood organization. I'm here in the spirit of working with everybody and working to benefit our neighborhood. That's why everybody's here running for the board. And I do have different politics. And on the issue of COVID, clearly we disagree on basic facts. And I haven't been able to present mine because I'm constantly told it's the wrong place. And yet when Claire says there's been no apology, I sent this to everybody at 8:19 on Sunday, February 20th, and it says, I apologize for the outburst. Well, let me back up. I have invited, my intent is not to disrupt this organization. I have invited individuals with lived experience of discrimination and bias to our meetings, and unfortunately, they are not familiar with our processes and the Zoom meeting format. Believe it or not, some people have been comfortably and safely meeting in person this whole time. I apologize for the outburst from them. Let me repeat, I apologize for the outburst from them and the one by myself when Jolene muted someone sharing their lived experience. I see this as an opportunity for outreach and to bring in people who are new to the public process, but that requires a patient approach based in understanding.
15 seconds, Harry.
I have a question for you, Harry, which is,
Hold on,
why
Harry
is it-
has 15 more seconds.
I thought he was done.
I am done. Thank you, Claire. I see
Okay.
the floor.
My question for you, Harry, is that why is your apology sufficient and mine is not? Because I sent an apology out to everybody on the board also.
Claire, I'm sorry, I may have missed that apology. Can you read that apology to me?
I don't happen to have it in front of me. I can't get
Okay.
into my email, but it was issued to everybody in the board.
Well, I may have missed that, and if so, I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Claire, I'm lowering your hand. Does anyone else have a comment before we vote on the motion to amend the time to bring this issue back to the table? I don't see anybody. So all those in favor of the motion to amend, please raise your hand in the participants list.
John, could you restate the motion, please?
The motion is to amend the time to bring the discussion on this issue back to the table from our next board meeting to our next retreat. Okay, I see one, counting myself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Dwight, I don't see your vote. Can you give it to us verbally?
Yes, it must have come down.
You vote yes?
Yes.
Okay, am I missing anyone?
Joshua,
John, did you see that I voted?
Yes.
Charles,
I have my hand up. I'm voting yes.
Okay, so the vote is unanimous to change the motion to, and I'll ask you to repeat it, Harry, as far as what the content is, to the next board meeting, no, excuse me, to the next retreat, passes unanimously. Now, Harry, will you restate the original motion as to what we are going to discuss?
it's in the,
Is it in the chat?
it's in the attachment.
It is. I said to take this issue under
Suggested motion
consideration to
two.
develop a plan. So this issue would be what was provided in the background.
Okay.
I can, here. I'll copy and paste what I had shared in the chat so that it's available for everyone.
Okay, we're 5 minutes over, John, 7 minutes
I
over.
know.
Yeah, is there a time expectation if we're still talking about some of those agenda items from the consent calendar?
Someone will have to vote to extend the meeting, or else it'll have to go to next month. Harry, could you read it for us, please? I move that the board take this issue. What is this issue?
That's what I just posted in the chat. So that was the background that I provided tonight that I believe is the issue at hand that should be addressed.
So this goes on and on.
Well, a lot of that is Article 7, Section 4.
I understand. So I don't see, other than the listing of the, I don't see an item. I just hear you repeating.
Sorry.
The agenda, or not the agenda, the charter. Could you tell us what you want us to talk about, please?
There you go. Cut off my second bullet point. So how was this decision made? What was the decision-making process that led to the meeting being closed to the public for the better part of an hour? And what happens with any items of business that were discussed or decisions made during that time when the meeting was closed? And if any further action is required to preserve our integrity and restore the neighborhood's faith in the public process.
Okay, got it. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I'm going to lower everybody's hand
because I thought that's what we were voting to take up at the board meeting or at the board retreat.
Yes.
So now we're voting on whether to also take it up at the general meeting.
No, we're taking it up. The motion is that this will be taken up at the board retreat. You're making a motion as to what that should be. So we have your motion. All those in favor of the motion for the retreat, please raise your hands.
I'm really confused on what we're voting on here. I thought we just voted on talking about this whole concept at the board retreat. So I'm lost.
No, we only voted on whether the discussion will be at the board retreat or the next board meeting. Now we're voting on whether we'll have the discussion on the request that Harry is raising now. So
I'd like to raise a point of parliamentary procedure. We just voted on whether to take up this debate as it was.
No, we didn't, Harry. We voted on whether
my
to.
motion as
Claire's
written,
motion
amended to be
said
discussed.
change.
I'm sorry, can I please
Harry,
have
be
the floor?
quiet, please. Let me tell you what we did. We voted previously on Claire's motion that rather than having your motion discussed at the next board meeting, that it be discussed at the next retreat. We are now voting on whether we're going to have the discussion at the retreat. Period.
So I withdraw my motion and I move, as we're already 5 minutes over time on this item that was stuffed at the end of the agenda, I move that we postpone it until next month to give it the consideration that's required.
So you're now withdrawing your motion. I don't think you actually can, Harry. It's now the body's motion. It's not yours. You can't withdraw a motion. That is Robert's rules. So we will now vote on the motion that you just made to be held at the next retreat. All those in favor?
Can we have discussion on that motion then? Because I think people
Harry, you just said we're 5 minutes over, but if you want to have discussion.
But I didn't call the
on your
question,
motion-
John. Are we following Robert's rules or are you just using it to silence me?
Harry, I'm trying to get through the
embarrassing, John.
meeting. Say what you want to say.
I am saying, I've said what I want to say. I want to work with people, but I'm constantly silenced and I can't possibly work with people who are being.
Are you
belligerent.
speaking to the motion, Harry?
I'm asking if we can speak to the motion because you just said we weren't.
I
I'm
asked
so
you to
confused
speak
here
to the
because
motion. Please speak to it.
So there was a violation of our charter. Business was conducted while a
You've
meeting
said
was
that already,
closed.
Harry. What do you have to say
Are
to
we
this motion?
going to address, so what? If I can't speak without being interrupted, then why are we here in a public meeting?
The motion is to take the motion we're voting on is the motion you made in the chat, which is to discuss this issue at the next retreat. Would you like to speak to that?
That's what I was speaking to, John. May I have the floor or not?
You have 2 minutes. Please just get it done.
Thank you. There was a violation of our charter that locked neighbors out of a public meeting. That is a fact. During that time, I don't know what businesses was conducted because although the minutes were told they'd be provided, I have yet to see them. There is a concern I have that is any business done during that period null and void because it wasn't done in an open meeting format. And I mean, we have 50 people here sitting here watching this. And yes, it's embarrassing that my emotions are as high as they are, but it's also embarrassing that the co-chairs of this committee have allowed this to get so far off the rails that people feel like it's okay to make unilateral decisions to close meetings without any consideration for the rest of the neighbors and the impact on the neighborhood. And I'm sorry, but a simple recognition that there was an error made is not adequate to address that this happened. And I think there's a serious question of what do we do about the business that was conducted. And yes, I would personally like to know how was this decision made that we would try locking a meeting because it doesn't appear to be transparent or accountable at all. Thank you.
Thank you. All that is in your motion, Harry. Any further discussion?
I do have a point to add that Claire did send a lot of background about this decision on February 18th to everybody on the board. So the statement that there's been no explanation provided, I think is inaccurate. So we might need to go back and revisit that in preparation for further discussion on this because that background was provided. Not necessarily that I agree with it, but there was some transparency provided to that decision.
As a
Joshua,
point of order to what Jackie just said, that information was
Harry,
provided in a closed
make your-
format, not open to the public.
Harry, the information was provided. Joshua, you want something to say?
I just wanted to say that I heard what was said, one of the things by Claire, which, was that after everyone had checked in and it seemed like everyone was there, then she tried closing the meeting. And I feel like that was not a great decision to make, but I feel like it was something that happened and she said she's not going to do it again. If this was some kind of like repeatable pattern that was like a consistent abuse, I would say, okay, we really need to focus on it. But I would prefer, rather than focusing on the whodunit and the accusations and whatnot, that we really focus on just like what our process is going forward and take the I don't know, what feels to me a little bit like personal vendetta stuff out of it, or just the I don't know. Anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Dan, your hands is up.
Yeah, a couple things. So first of all, a point of order is a query in a formal debate or meeting as to whether a correct procedure is being followed. It is not I don't agree with what the last person said, so I like to interject with my own personal opinion. That is what Robert's Rules of Order is. If the members on this call do not understand what Robert's Rules are, I would highly suggest taking a class, a YouTube video, or some other action that will allow you to be able to come to the next meeting well prepared to understand how we move forward. Second, it feels as though we have, or rather, a pound of pain for a rather small infliction here. If we're looking to draw this thing out and to punish everything from happening, I guess we can go in that direction, but it doesn't seem to be moving in the direction of let's come together and find a pathway forward. I feel both sides have made an apology. I think both sides have their emotions running hot. So if we're being honest in that we are trying to take people at their word and move forward, then let's actually do so. If we're using points of order and everything else to slow down the process, draw the thing out, bolster your public opinion and your profile so that you can champion a cause that no one else is talking about tonight, then there's a different pathway that you can take as well.
Okay, I am going to rule, which is subject to vote by anyone who opposes, that I'm going to close debate and we're going to vote. Is there anyone who wishes to challenge that decision?
I have my hand up to request the floor. I challenge you closing this to a vote.
Okay, does anyone second Harry's challenge? Hearing none, we will vote, Harry. I'm sorry, you've had numerous opportunities and I suspect that's why you don't have a
Point of
second.
order, John, is it proper to add that commentary when closing it for the vote?
I certainly feel the need to, Harry.
That feels like a personal affront that is
Harry,
unnecessary. As to
we're voting.
Jan's, it's funny
Let
how
us
the rules
vote,
apply
please,
at times,
Harry.
but not always. Thank
All
you.
those in favor of the motion made by Harry to have this discussion at the next retreat, please raise your hand. I see Dwight's hand up and Harry's hand up. Does anyone else wish to vote yes? All those voting no, please, Jan's raising his hand. 3 I see in favor. All those opposed, please raise your hand now. Harry, you can't vote twice. I'm lowering it, assuming that you're voting no, that you voted yes. I see 4 hands up and my hand is up as well. I assume that there are 2 abstentions. The vote is 2 yes, 5 no. I'm sorry, Harry, your motion does not pass. Okay, at this point in time, someone needs to make a motion whether or not we're going to take up to extend the meeting to take up the motion, the items that were removed from consent calendar. Otherwise, we'll take them up at our next board meeting. Those items are a general meeting policy that would preclude having introductions when there's more than 40 people present. Asking to renew the membership list and charge for committees, and then finally approving the minutes. Does anyone want to move to extend the meeting? And for how long?
So moved for 30 minutes.
Oh,
Well, it
Remember,
has
we
to
don't
be
have to use
moved
that whole
and
30 minutes.
seconded, and then it has to be approved. So that's your motion, 30 minutes. Is there a second for 30 minutes? Dan, I don't think your motion has a second. Does anyone
Chair.
else? Does anyone else want to make a second motion for extending the meeting? Or shall we adjourn?
I'll make a motion for 15 minutes with the notion that it doesn't actually have to go for 15 minutes if we power through it very quickly and we get it done at 7.
Okay, is there a second to Dan's motion for 15 minutes?
yes, 15 minutes.
Okay, so we have a motion and it's seconded. It's not debatable. All those in favor for extending the meeting for 15 minutes, please raise your hand in the participants list. I see 4 yes. All those voting no, please lower your hands and let's see the noes. I see Harry, Claire, Joshua, Jackie, and myself. Okay, the motion fails. Any further motions on extending the meeting? I'm assuming the hands that are up are still from voting. So does anyone have another motion? Jackie, do you? No, okay. Dan.
I have mine, but it depends on it. It's unrelated to the items that are on the agenda. I want to know if it's the chair's discretion or whether or not you call whether you recognize it.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that we as a body pass a resolution that tethers the board members and its general membership to a rule of decorum that should outbursts like what just occurred happen again, the chair has the right and authority to call the outburst out of order. And if it happens again by a vote of the body, that person is
So
to be
John,
muted
I
for
would
the
like a
duration
point of
of the meeting.
order, which allows me to interrupt the speaker.
No,
whether
you
it's
may not,
appropriate
Harry.
To make personal affronts.
Harry, he has
to-
not finished his motion, so please be quiet.
I will
Please
repeat.
continue, Dan.
I will repeat, and this is not against any one person if everyone would let me finish. I move that we as a body pass a resolution that tethers the board members and its entire general membership to a rule of decorum such that should outbursts like what just occurred happen again, the chair has the right and authority to call that person out of order, and if it happens again, by a vote of the full body, mute that person for the duration of the meeting.
Your
So
motion can't be
point of order,
considered.
John.
Harry, be quiet.
That item was not on
Harry,
the
shut
agenda,
up.
and we have items that were postponed from the consent calendar that should be on the
Harry,
agenda.
I'm sorry,
This is-
but I am muting you. Okay,
This is what a point of order.
Harry, let me finish and you can make your point of order when I'm done. Dan, unless there is a motion to continue the meeting for a time certain, we can't take it up.
Okay.
So you could make that motion if you wanted.
So moved.
For how much time?
10 minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. it's
So a
been
point
moved
of
and seconded.
parliamentary procedure, John, may I ask? you
We
if
are
you
now
vote
voting
to
on the
leapfrog
motion. It is
items that
not
are already on the
debatable, Harry.
agenda?
You can speak after we're done.
This is a point of parliamentary procedure. Is it appropriate?
Harry, it is not appropriate. Okay, all those in favor for extending for 10 minutes
Point
because
of
we
order,
don't.
I object to John doing what he is doing.
I
and
hear what you're
silencing-
doing, Harry, but we don't
I am
have a
following
meeting
Robert's
unless
rules
we
of order. I'm
extend it.
asking you for clarification. I'm asking
Harry,
for
I will
clarification.
continue to mute you. Now let us get through this motion. Okay,
asking for-
Harry, I told you to shut up. I'm sorry for being plain and simple, but you are not going to speak until we vote on this motion. Then you can speak. And I can't believe this. There is a motion on the table to extend for 10 minutes. All those in favor of extending for 10 minutes, please raise your hand. I see 2 hands raised. All those opposed, please raise your hand. And yes, Harry, if we are not going to extend the meeting, I will give you 2 minutes for your opportunity to say whatever you want. But until that we vote, we will not do that. I vote no. Anybody else voting? Okay, evidently there are abstentions. The vote fails for a vote of 4-2. So Harry, you once again, you have 2 minutes.
So I was raising a point of parliamentary procedure. According to Robert's Rules of Order, I may interrupt the speaker. This is not debatable. I don't need a second. And I find it highly offensive that while trying to be a responsible public official, if that's what we're calling this scenario, I'm trying to follow the rules here. And I'm being interrupted and muted and silenced and yelled at and cursed at. And that's just completely out of line. And I mean, come on, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now if this attack on me hadn't started in December. Yeah, that's absolutely true, because the Social Justice Committee has been out of order for 2 months. Nobody will address it here. So sure, I'll waste these 2 minutes. I don't know why you just gave me the floor. We're all ready to go home. Let's go home.
Because I promised I would, Harry, and I keep my promise.
I wanted to raise a point during what was going on that is a valid interruption. Not because I'm trying to disrupt the meeting to throw it off course, because I'm trying to disrupt somebody who is throwing it off course to get it back on course. And when I can't do that and that creates friction, how can we ever move forward? And the Zoom format, just for the record, this Zoom format stinks. We need to be back in person. Like, you guys just have complete disrespect for me because I'm a face on a screen to you. As evidenced here tonight. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you, Harry. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your patience.